Welcome to my live webinar series, and I'm finally happy to get Sam on the show.
Sorry.
Well, it was both of us. I think you cancelled and then I cancelled, but you know, that's life. That's just the way it goes, right? So we're pretty flexible in our approach to this, purely because we know if it was going to happen, it was going to happen eventually. So thanks for joining us, ladies. I'm just going to tell you a tiny bit about Sam, and then we're going to get straight into the interview. I'm really looking forward to speaking to Sam today. She is a journalist, editor, and broadcaster who specializes in amplifying women's voices. Her most recent book is the memoir Menopause Manifesto, The Shift, which you can see here, how I lost and found myself after 40, and you can too. And she created the hit podcast of the same name. So if you haven't checked out that podcast, go and have a listen, ladies. She has some great guests on. It's just called The Shift. She has edited some of the UK's biggest magazines, including Cosmopolitan and Red, and co-founded the groundbreaking women's mobile platform, The Pool, which I don't know about. Could you tell me a bit about that, Sam? What?
No, it's dead now. It went for about 4 years, and then it died. Ad funded digital media.
You know, that's the way of the world at the moment, isn't it? I think that's just the way things go. So anyway, I'm really glad to have you on the webinar today, and I want to start by first of all asking why you don't have a Scottish accent, because Sam's coming to us from Edinburgh, I believe.
Because I'm not Scottish. I'm not Scottish.
That's the answer then.
Why haven't you got an American accent?
Well, I do. I say y'all quite a lot.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you moved to.
I have started saying canny since I've moved up here. Can I do that? It's like
I always say we, because my husband's from Scotland too, so I say we all the time.
Yeah,
it's a great.
Yeah.
So can you tell me, I mean, I know you write about amplifying women's voices, and it's a super important topic for you, but what was the basis of writing The Shift? Why did you feel the need to write a book?
Where do I start, really? I mean, I think the bottom line is I went into perimenopause in my mid-40s. So not that young, but younger than a lot of my friends. And I just didn't really know what was happening to me. And I think we've all now heard lots of people say this, that, you know, most of the symptoms, I mean, are there 34 or 64 or 128 symptoms, and nobody really knows. And the one that everybody knows about is hot flushes. And what the things that people don't talk to you about, the mental health symptoms. So I was actually working on the launch of the Pool, RIP. So I'd left my job. I didn't have a salary. I was starting this business with a friend and with investors, and I was also losing my marbles. I mean, going mad, losing my confidence, depression, anxiety, all these things going on, and I had no idea that I was perimenopausal. And it wasn't until, I don't know, 18 months in.
Oh my God, you could be me. and every other woman listening, yeah.
And everyone that I spoke to for the book, almost. I mean, I didn't go so far as to think that I had early onset dementia, which a lot of the women I spoke to did. But I didn't have a clue what was happening to me. Plus, when I went to my older friends thinking that they would, say, oh, what do you think? Is this, do you think this is menopause? That they were all like, oh, I'm not there yet. So I don't believe that for a moment, actually, but I think that's part of the wider thing around menopause, isn't it? It's the kind of taboo around it. So scroll forward 5-6 years. And I just thought, you know what? Now I'm kind of coming out the other side. And I was really shocked by how much better I felt, like better than I had ever felt, actually. And so those two things combined made me want to write about it. I didn't want anyone, as much as possible, I didn't want anyone else to go into that in the way I had, not having a clue what was happening, and then encountering that conspiracy of silence around it. And then when I came out the other side, I wanted other people to know that there was light at the end of the tunnel, and actually it's kind of great out here, I think. And again, a lot of the women that I've spoken to, the older women, were like, oh, do you know what? I love being in my 50s. I much prefer being in my 50s to in my 40s. And I think it's that kind of post-hormonal thing going on, but also it's the kind of knowing what's going on around you. And I'm loving seeing, I mean, your book came out roughly the same time as mine, but since our books came out, because we're so groundbreaking, Amanda, there's been this whole flurry of books coming out. And this year there's absolutely loads. And it's so lovely to see loads of women standing up and going, you know what, actually, it's really shit. And this is what you can expect. I mean, not necessarily, you might be lucky and not have a shitty perimenopause. And then this is what you can expect afterwards. And I just think that's really reassuring.
Yeah, and I really like that as well, because I think that the use of that conspiracy of silence, I think that comes from that lack of awareness, lack of knowledge. And I know that when I was going through it, and I think it was about a similar time to you, I couldn't find anything, any information at all.
No.
8 years on, I'm like overwhelmed with information a little bit. Like there's a lot of, information out there. I don't always agree with all of it, but I do like the fact that women, we were talking about that just before this, but I do like the fact that women are now feeling brave enough to just talk about it. It's groundbreaking. And I'm always like trying to say to women, you don't understand the impact of these small conversations that you have with your girlfriends, with your nieces, with your daughters, with your sons even, because it's really important to open up the narrative of that. So so I'm really glad you did write the book. I loved it. One of the things that I want to talk to you about, because it just made me giggle, is you have a chapter called Good Morning Flesh Duvet, and in my book I have one. It's called Why Are You So Bloody Fat, but I call it the Menopause Flesh Blankets. We have a flesh duvet and a flesh blanket, and I was like, kindred spirits. I love it.
But it's such a shock, isn't it? I mean, and I know it sounds like a massive exaggeration, but I really felt like I went to bed, and when I woke up, my clothes didn't fit anymore. It was literally that sudden, and I had gained flesh in places where I, you know how where if you're going to put on weight, depending on your body shape, where you do. And it's like, this back fat thing, which I've worked really hard to get rid of. But, the back fat, and it was just astonishing. It was astonishing to me. And I think, fundamentally, it's about a change of body shape, isn't it? But it did feel like there was a layer of a quilt that had gone on all over my body. And it took me a really long time to work out how to, because I have to be honest, I'm not a person who could work out how to live with it. It's just not me. I couldn't. Lots of people are like, this is me, take it or leave it. And when I had Marion Keyes on the podcast, she had gone through a long process of saying, if somebody had just said to me, this is your body now, then I could have decided whether or not that I was going to go with that, but at least I would have expected it.
Yeah, so the conversation around that, I really want to dig into that a bit, Sam, because from the personal training, nutrition, I think I posted...
Well, you make me feel bad every day, Amanda. I'm sorry. I look at you on Instagram and you're like swimming and being all fit, and I'm just like, I just want more toast.
I know.
Yeah. Mute that woman. Yeah.
I'm trying to be a positive influence, and people are like, let's just delete that. But in seriousness, I have had conversations in my community with women that they literally hate themselves when they look in the mirror. And I wondered what the thought process was that you went through, or that you've heard from other women that helped them sort of process those feelings to get to the point where they can say, this is where I am right now, and now I'm in the driving seat. I get to decide if I'm going to stay like this or change. And I wondered what your thought process was.
I think that the real issue is that a lot of, and I don't want to generalize, because not all women, but a lot of women, and certainly a lot of women that I know, they've had body image issues since they were really young. So it's not going to stop now, is it? It's not going to stop when you're 48 or 46. And if you combine that with, our society is so youth focused, what is judged attractive, that should or shouldn't matter, but it's there, is young, it's thin, And, so you come to this point where you probably, for me personally, I'd always struggled. I'd always been a bit body dysmorphic. And then, you wake up one morning and you literally are half a stone heavier than when you went to sleep. And for instance, I say half a stone heavier, but I wouldn't know because I have a terrible relationship with scales, and I haven't had scales in my house for decades. And if I was to check into a hotel room that had scales, I would put the scales outside the hotel room door because I'm not safe around scales.
I actually think that's a healthy attitude to have around scales personally. It's not a bad, it's like, I love the fact that you're not tying yourself to that number because it can send women in a downward spiral. But yeah, you're right. Like, I think a lot of us come into menopause with some body dysmorphia, whether we want to admit it or not. It's very easy to look at yourself in the mirror and point out all of the things that you don't like about yourself. And somebody in my community had said something like, talk to yourself like you're your best friend. Like,
yes,
like, wow, you look your eyes are pretty today, or you've got such a cute bum, or something that you would.
Exactly. And that's, Jackie's just said it's how you feel in your clothes, and that's exactly how I decided to approach it, probably in my mid-20s, when I finally decided to kick the scales, because I became aware that my mood could change based on what the scales said to me in the morning. I could wake up feeling fine, get up on the scales, and then not feel fine anymore, which is ridiculous. But I think I went through, and again, a lot of the women that I spoke to for the shift had the same thing. I went through almost like speed dating with different sorts of fitness. I've always walked a lot, and I used to be a big swimmer, and swim competitively in my teens. But hair, swimming, those two things.
I wouldn't want to put that in a swim cap. It's bad enough these. Yeah.
Those really big 70s ones with the flowers. I need a really big swim cap. Anyway, so it took me a long time to discover weight training, and so I still walk a lot every day, but it was the weight training that dealt with the muscle tone ultimately. But all the time when I was writing that bit of the book, that chapter, and in fact a lot of the women that I spoke to said they felt like they couldn't admit that they wanted to lose weight, that they wanted to reshape their body. They felt that made them a bad person.
Yeah, like they're failing, or even failing to because they put weight on. I hear that as well.
Yeah, not part of the sisterhood as well. And the HRT thing was the same actually. It's like, you know how it is. Everything you do, you're judged if you do, judged if you don't. And so, in fact, in that chapter, I had an awful lot of messages from people saying, what was the gym that you found and how did that work? And and unfortunately the gym that I went to in London went bust at the beginning of lockdown, but ultimately it's the principle, isn't it? It's like trying different things and finding different things that work for you and accepting that as well. It's the kind of classic Nora Ephron quote that about wishing you'd worn a bikini the whole year you were 26.
I love that.
Don't we all? It's like, I thought I was fat then. I thought I was fat when I was 36. I thought I was fat when I was 46. Well, 46 I kind of was for a while. It's we're just trained, I think, to judge ourselves, and it takes a lot to kick that.
Yeah, there's a lot of unpacking to do for sure. And I often will tell women to look back at their 30-year-old self and wish and say the things you wish you'd said to them, and to look at themselves with kinder eyes. But Sandra just made me laugh when she said, I look around to see what's attached to my arse and I'm running and it's just me. Which is, adding humor into these type of environments is also a real benefit and a real plus. And interestingly, that you attach yourself to weight training as a positive influence in your life and to help with the body dysmorphia. And actually, there's a bunch of studies that show how weight training can actually help with improved body image. Like it's a something that they encourage women to do that really do struggle with. I was going to mute Mandy. that really do struggle with body dysmorphia. So I mean, it's just, and
that's really interesting.
It's probably due to things changing on a cellular level, but also the type of endorphins that you release when you do that. Like, you can look at yourself in the mirror before a workout and then afterwards and go, oh my God, look at me, I look epic. And it's because you
it's just
feel epic.
Yeah, I think it's also that the weight training really, and this sounds so stupid, but the weight training made the connection in my brain between, oh, look what my body can do. You know, this is not about whether or not you're thin. This is about strength. You know, it's about strength. It's about fitness. It's about not creaking when you get out of bed in the morning, because that does become a thing.
Like one of those glow sticks that you crack. That's what it's like, isn't it, in the morning? And weight training to me is about like taking up more space, figuratively and literally. Yes. And so that's my bread and butter, of course, so I'm all over that. But you talked about the feminist attitude towards hormone replacement therapy, and I didn't actually touch on that slant when I wrote it. I did read about it in Estrogen Matters with Dr. Avram Bloomin, because Dr. Carol Tavris, if you ever want her on your show, she's amazing. She is she calls herself as a feminist skeptic, but she is very much pro HRT as a choice that women should all have, and that's my stance too, essentially. But did you come up with any resistance to the hormone replacement therapy message at all, or did you feel like most women wish they had the opportunity to try it?
I think that what I expected to be honest, because there is certainly on social media, there's a huge, you're basically siding with the pharmaceutical industry, and you're medicalizing a natural condition, all of that. But what came out more was how difficult most women found it to get it.
Yeah.
And the situation is obviously different in America, but in the UK, it's surprisingly hard to get it on the NHS. And again, Marion would be a good example. When I spoke to her on the podcast, she had only been on when she'd only been on it a year, her GP was already trying to get her off because of the alleged connection to breast cancer, even though she has no history of that in her family at all. So she would not have been at high risk.
It's an outdated message, isn't it? I mean, I think that I see people out over in the UK doing a really good job trying to, educate doctors and women. And, at least you have prescribing guidelines that women can print off and take to the doctor. In the US, that doesn't exist. And in fact, I find it a little bit more tricky in the US because it's a privatized healthcare. And I'm sure some of the people listening will join in. It's just so difficult to even see the right doctor. And then, you may get rejected, probably overprescribed antidepressants, which I don't have a problem with, but they usually not the
that
first.
happens in the UK a lot as well. As the first port of call is antidepressants.
Yeah, so I find that too. So I didn't come up with any resistance either. I actually found that most women were like, I had no idea. I had no idea at all. And I sort of compare it to thyroid issues. If you've got thyroid issues, you can't naturally support that with food or lifestyle. Well, you can, but it's not going to change the fact you've got thyroid issues. You're likely going to need thyroid medication to feel human again, and that's essentially what hormone replacement therapy can do for a lot of women. And someone's saying that Jackie is saying that Dr. Louise Newson helped her decide to go on HRT, and so I would just advise people just to dig deep and find a specialist that will actually listen, which is half the battle, right?
And Louise, Dr. Newsom is very good at actually providing with the information to take to your GP, because GPs aren't trained in it. The clue's in the name, it's general practitioner, but they aren't trained in it. They don't, you probably, or even if you know nothing, you know as much as they do when you go in. So, she's very good at saying, take this to your doctor. And if your doctor won't help you, then get referred, get a second opinion. I mean, I went private to get mine in the end, and actually have just been getting mine privately ever since. But since I've moved to Scotland, I went, when I signed up with the GP at the end of the road, they said, oh, we'll do that for you. And I thought, well, I'll take that because prescriptions are free here, and I've been paying God knows how much every month. But I most of the women I spoke to had a really hard time getting it. And you're feeling shit already. So the last thing you need is a doctor basically saying, oh, that's life, love, you know.
Yeah, get on with it. Or, you know,
Yeah.
like, and I think it doesn't help the fact that like the generation before us weren't very vocal, but you know, this is what I like about your book. It's quite clear that we're tired of being quiet, right? And I'm very vocal, you're very vocal, and there's a whole load of other women sort of starting this massive ripple. And I like to say to the community that follows me that just start having those small grassroots conversations, because they're more impactful than you can even imagine. My example of that is I went to my doctor who refused HRT. Then I advocated for myself because I went in with probably more knowledge than him. He eventually gave me an estrogen only medication that was quite outdated anyway, without a progesterone. And I just was like, I need a referral. You don't know what you're doing, essentially. But then when I got home, there was an email from him saying, you know what, I did a bit of research. He was offended by me at first, but whatever, I don't care. And he did his research and he was like, you're right. And now I'll change how I look at this for other women. And so that's my point. If you do small things, in anything in life, they always have big impactful, you know, results. Okay, Sam, let's talk about crap clothing, invisibility, shopping, all of those things. Like,
how long have we got?
I know. I'll give you a soapbox now. I mean, this is like something we all feel, right? Like, where is our places? Who are the people that like respect us and hold us in high esteem? I feel like we have to fight for that type of platform, don't you? And it's wrong.
It's, you know what, it's really interesting. I mean, by the time I'd finished talking to all the women and writing the book, I had reached a point where I thought, do you know what, all these things, they're superpowers. You know, experience, invisibility to a certain extent, you know, that stopping people pleasing, starting to speak your mind, all these things are powers that I didn't have before. But when I started writing the book, I still felt a bit at that point like, oh, I have to play down my experience, because if to have as much experience as I've got, I must be old. You know, and part of that came from having worked with a bunch of young women on the launch of the pool. I mean, they were both incredible. They shaped me massively, partly because they were millennials and they were not putting up with any shit of any description, even shit that frankly they should have put up with. So like at the one end, you've got our mothers saying, oh, it's just life. Yeah, it's just normal. Just put up with it and move on. And the other end, I had all these young women going, I get really chronic period pain and I need to work from home 2 days a month. And that's it, you know, end of conversation. So I was thinking, on the one hand, they would not put up with this menopause shit. No way. So why should our generation wait for them to get menopausal to sort it out? You know, we need to sort it out ourselves. But at the same time, and I've got a guest coming up in the new series of The Shift, which starts next week. Sorry about that, I had to get that in.
Oh, what a shameless plug, but I love it.
Yeah. And she said, you know, she had started to feel like, I'm not relevant anymore. And I felt like that too, especially working with young women. And it wasn't, I mean, blokes as well, but it wasn't just the blokes, it was young women too. I felt like I wasn't valid. And so if you combine that with the fact that it's better than it was a year ago, but if you combine that with the fact that if you turn on the TV, there aren't many women over 40 who are under 80. You know, yeah. I mean, it's almost like women evaporate until they get really old. I mean, it's the same now. If you go on Google now and Google older women, you'll get Stana stair lifts. I mean, I'm not kidding you. You'll get grannies. So you won't get you won't get me, you won't get any of the faces that I can see at the top. You will get old women. And if you think how bad that is, if you're a white woman who's in her 40s and 50s, imagine what that is like if you're Asian or black. I mean, the representation is absolutely shocking. And then, you know, take that through to the fashion industry, and I will be here all night. You know, one woman I spoke to who is very senior in the fashion industry has run 2 of the biggest businesses in the UK. told me she feels like she can't get a job, because if you're a woman of her roughly, I'm not sure how old you are, she's roughly my age, you're not young and cool, but you're not one of those old blokes. So there are no women like us who know how we want to dress, because we get up every morning and try and work out what we're going to put on. There are very few women like us running the fashion industry. So that's like a fundamental problem. Middle-aged women are not cool because we're not running things, so we're not the ones saying what's cool, and we don't have gravitas, because you have to be an older man to have gravitas.
An old white
See,
man.
I'm just ranting. I'm sorry.
I love it. But that's what we do.
Just get really cross.
I love that you said cross. I say that to my kids, and they're like, "What does that mean when you're cross with me?" Well, they know what it means, but it's just not
say.
I'm good at getting cross, but they don't use that over here.
What word do they use?
Angry, I suppose.
Oh, angry.
Yeah, I say
angry too.
I say vexed. I'm really vexed, and they're like, nah.
No, that's really northern, isn't it? Yeah. Well, it's vexing, but also, there's one fashion brand who, they're a Scandinavian fashion brand, and everybody I know who's roughly my age, so kind of between 40, mid-late 50s, had bought something, when I was writing the book, had bought something from them in the previous year. And they know from their own research that their shopper is over 40, but a fashion savvy over 40. But they persist in showing all of their clothes on
younger
skinny
models.
Teenagers with nobody, even though those images are very off-putting. And that's, I'm just picking on them because I know for a fact that they do it, but everybody does it.
Yeah, anti-aging. In the anti-aging industry, that we all got, but like you look at, so they target us for anti-aging products and creams, etc., but they're always on 25, 30-year-old models, always. There's not a wrinkle in sight. Oh, that's because the products work, I suppose, right? But
no, it's because the airbrushing works. I did an ad count when I was writing those chapters about representation in the fashion industry, and there were, I think it would have been a year ago, and I went through a few glossy magazines, but I remember going through Vogue, and there were 4 ads out of this, this doorstop, 4 ads with women over 40. And 2 of them were for fragrance, and that was Julia Roberts and Kate Blanchett. And the other 2 were anti-aging products, out of probably 150 ads. Absolutely shocking. And I remember walking past, in fact, it must have been just before lockdown, so it would have been early March, walking past Boots and seeing a visual in the window. It was for number 7, and it was for an anti-aging product. But the woman was probably late 40s, and she had like a crepey chest, and she had crow's feet. I nearly died of shock. I swear it's the only one I've ever seen before or since, actually.
Yeah.
And then they didn't use her in their ads. She was just on their shelf talker.
Right. They can't do that, it seems. It's like, it's very enraging. And then on the flip side of that, we were talking about this, that in the past couple of years, the menopause market, that niche and that target, is a billion-dollar industry now, especially over here in the US. I'm not so sure about the UK as much, but they know we have possibly disposable income. They know that we're vulnerable and have issues that we want to sort of like help resolve. And I'm overwhelmed. And like you as well, I get constantly asked to promote products that are all to do with, menopause and fixing menopause, and the language they use is toxic. So you've got, we're ignored in one realm, and then in the other realm, we're targeted as being broken and needing fixing. It's really very frustrating.
Well, there's a real sense that if you put Menno in front of a name, you can like double the price. They're not meeting real need. They're just, say peddling bad science in many cases, not all, and offering a quick fix. And it's like, if you walk in any health store in the UK, or in fact into the menopause aisle in Boots, and I can't remember what it was called, but it literally used to be called older women, something like that. And it was at the opposite end from the pregnancy test, just in case you hadn't got that message that you know that was no longer for you. And it was all meno this, meno that, meno the other, and it's just like I mean, guys, it's. And then we were talking earlier, which about there was a Chorus product, and I don't know if it's still available, but that they launched a range called Meno Reverse.
Meno Reverse. That's insulting.
How long have you got? I mean, how much is wrong with that?
Yeah, so I think all of the people listening and our, you know, both of us are tired of this. I know I fight back and call out a lot of the misinformation, just from, if I know they're peddling supplements, at least it's a background that I can talk about like extensively, but there's stuff out there that's very, very confusing. And if you don't have the background knowledge to sort of like call things out, chances are you're going to maybe try it. And I'm okay with women trying things if they, you know, don't cause any harm, but usually they're so expensive, and they're, you know, you're going to be putting hundreds of dollars away a month on supplements and menopause powders and things. Oh, I don't know, it's like crazy. But they're essentially, you could probably benefit from, they can cause harm to your person.
They do, yeah.
Exactly. But like, whereas the things that they're pushing are probably best resolved through lifestyle changes, like and hormone replacement therapy, if that's an option for you.
I mean, there was a point when I had tried loads of things like black cohosh and this, that, and the other. None of it had worked. And in fact, I haven't found anyone who said that it worked instead of HRT. Some of them said that it might have had like a additional benefit, but no, you know. And it was the point when I was Googling away and I found this magnet that
oh, I remember the magnet. Yes.
Yeah, the magnet, the 50 quid magnet that you put in your knickers. And for a split second I considered it, and I just thought, no, you need to step away from the Google and go and see a gynecologist, because you know, if you're going to pay 50 quid for a magnet to put in your knickers, you really need to, you know, you need to get some proper advice here, love.
Exactly.
Ridiculous.
Okay, so I want to move on, and you did touch on this a little bit, and I loved what you had to say, but we'll just reiterate it. So, you know, you wrote the book because it was such a challenging time for you in perimenopause and menopause. You got this light at the end of the tunnel. It's very similar to my story. I still have a few issues, but you know, like they're more manageable, and I can like cope with those, probably because I have knowledge, and you know, that's one of the biggest things. But you talk about the light at the end of the tunnel, and I'd love you to sort of like just remind us of the things that, you know, you gained from menopause, because it's such a hard time, and women can do hard things. We show this all the time, and those hard things usually end up bearing some fruit at the end, right? So what were yours?
That's part of the problem, isn't it? Is that the focus is on what we're losing, not on what we're gaining always. And then so that, you know, kind of creates a fear of aging, I think. And it was I've said this before, so I do apologize, but it's like that scene in Fleabag with Kristen Scott Thomas.
Brilliant.
You know, it was, I remember when I saw that, and she said, you know, in a nutshell, the menopause is absolutely fucking awful, and then it's amazing, it's the best thing in the world. And that was probably the first, and again possibly the last time I have heard a female character say that, but also seen a menopausal female character on TV who was really hot, you know, really hot. And not in that kind of, oh, she's a bit fat and a bit angry and she's like, mum's having a hot flush, let's make her the butt of the joke. And that really made me, you know, that scene really, really made me think about it.
It's such a brilliant scene, and if anyone hasn't watched it, it's just
it's on
so
YouTube.
So well written.
Hunt it down.
Yeah.
So it's so well written, but it's so on the nail, and it just made me take a step back and think about what other things so my waist isn't quite as small as it used to be, and my body temperature has gone up a couple of degrees permanently, and you know, when it's the whole fertility thing and all that. But actually, once I came through the very negative mental health symptoms that I had, I found that I had crossed a bridge psychologically in many, many ways. I mean, one of those things was I did have therapy for CBT for 18 months, but that, which was to deal with something that happened to me in my late teens, which I had just been in denial about for my entire adult life. And I do think that is a menopause thing that I have some work to do that I had refused to do. And the countless women I've spoken to have said that they reached a point, again, around about 50 or in their late 40s, where they just thought, I need to deal with this because I am not going to go through the next 30, 40 years of my life and not deal with that. So I dealt with this thing that has happened to me, which I do allude to in a bit more detail in the book. But so I can't divorce the two things, what was menopause and what was having that therapy. Yes. But I can say that I do believe that menopause led me to have that therapy. I feel better in myself than I have ever felt. I do feel invisible in some situations, and you know what? I don't give a toss.
Oh, that's good. Yes,
I don't give a toss. I mean, builders don't whistle at me. They haven't done for the best part of 30 years. Probably I couldn't care less. I think that's a superpower. I've learned to say no for the first time in my life. I've learned to do what I need to do for me. Mm-hmm. And one of those things was moving to Edinburgh. My partner and I had always wanted to live here. We were no longer tied to London for work. We got a lot of flack from family and close friends, work people saying, oh, you'll never work again if you go up there. Family who didn't want us to leave. We bit that bullet and went anyway. It was the best thing that we ever did. I definitely would not have had the
bravery,
self-containment, bravery to a certain extent to do that. But over and over, I think that you just go back to the beginning. Over and over again, you hear women say, how did she put it? Karen Franklin put it brilliantly. And I'm not going to be able to remember what she said, but basically she was talking about starting a new relationship with herself. And I think for some women that will be because their children are grown up and they're no longer having to give every ounce of themselves to, all those other things going on. But there are other women like me who feel the same but didn't have children. And I think, is that to do with estrogen? I think it may well be to do with that estrogen.
I think it is. I think going through the mental health challenges that almost all women do, they have, if it's not depression or anxiety, there's a definite lack of self-esteem and even just like self-worthiness about themselves. And I definitely found that I had to dig deep and do the work in that area too, but it's sort of so liberating. But it didn't come until I was post-menopause, and I feel like it's a gift that, like you say, you're just able to just be a bit more content with yourself. Jackie's just asked there, what can you do on a daily or at least a regular basis to keep in a more positive space? I can get so miserable over insignificant things. It's kind of like feeling stuck in a funk.
Yeah, I mean, I still get like that. Like today, for a start, I mean, lockdown really, really has not helped, has it? I mean, it's just feels so cut off from everyone. And I know this sounds like a really terrible cliche, but I do just go for a walk. I really find that if I'm been stuck indoors and I'm just getting more and more, down, I suppose, that if I just go, I mean, I'm lucky I live in Edinburgh. I mean, I have a 15-minute walk from, I would call it a mountain. Locals would call it a big hill, probably, a mountain or the sea or, so just get out.
Arthur's Seat.
Arthur's Seat. Oh my God. I will not be able to breathe, but that is as high as I'm getting, I have to say. It's, but I don't know. I just think also cut yourself some slack. I was very, very bad at cutting myself any slack at all. And I think in a way lockdown has helped because, you can't have FOMO when everybody's stuck at home,
No, I always call it a JOMO, the joy of missing out.
Yes.
So have JOMO instead of FOMO. And I think it's really normal to feel stuck in a funk when you're going through such a seismic change, because it is such a huge shift. More so, I felt this more so than I ever did like puberty, but obviously I was immature and I don't remember that much, but it's massive, and it's not unusual to have these type of feelings. To me, I think that you acknowledge these feelings, you take them on, and then you ask yourself the question, similar to CBT, like, you know, how does this make me feel? How can I react to this? Like, it's again, it helps you change that relationship. So we'll get.
I think, sorry, can I just add in?
Yeah,
I just want to say, I do think that the point you just made about puberty is really important, because I do think it's a reverse puberty. And, you know, we all know about puberty. We all know what to expect. You know, you're in your early teens and everybody around you knows what's going on. And yet here you are, you're 50. You've got all the responsibilities that go with being 50 or 45 or 55, wherever you are. And you're going through the same maelstrom of emotions which is the hormones leaving, and nobody talks about it. Of course you feel terrible,
with more responsibilities, with more more life stresses. Exactly. Yeah. So I think it's pretty normal, but having these type of conversations is so helpful. Sandra said, for me, it was accepting that who I was and what I did in my past is no longer, but that's sort of okay. And I agree with that. Yeah. Kind of letting yourself grieving away. My kids are grown, my body has changed physically, but there are still so many things I can do and new experiences to enjoy. It's not easy, I agree, but that's a great way of looking at it. Thank you, Sandra. Okay, so we are getting towards the end of the time, and we have 3 books to give away today, and so I'm excited for you ladies to do this. And because there's only a few people on the live right now, your chances are you're going to do well. Sam spoke about how we focus on things that we tend to lose. I'm like this with diets. People always talk about restrictions, and I'm always like, what can you add to your diet to help you feel better? And you said that about menopause. What have you gained? Like, what are the positives? So I would like to hear from you ladies to tell me what you have gained, or if you're in perimenopause or menopause. And the first 3 that respond will receive a book. So Sandra, more me time. Perfect. Jackie, freedom. And Donna, thank you. Confidence. And I think confidence is one of those things that, you know, you start to feel confident about yourself, and all of a sudden the world opens up again to you. Because when you lose your confidence and you really are down on yourself, you don't feel like you can thrive again. And that's essentially what both of our books are saying, right? We're saying you can thrive through this. It takes a lot of work though. Wisdom. I feel like I always say this, like, when I should have a pipe. I feel like I'm like, I need a tent and a fire and a pipe. That's That's great. So Sam, where can people get the book? Where can people find you? Can you let me know, please?
You can find me on Twitter a bit, not very much because it's too shouty, and I'm at Sam Baker, and I'm the other Sam Baker on Instagram. And the book is out in paperback next Thursday, so if you don't have it, sit tight, and you can get a paperback next Thursday. In the UK, in the States, now I might have to let you know.
It's the book depository. You can get it through
the book depository. That's it. Yeah, and they will ship it.
That's how I got mine, and one from you. And how can we find? So the podcast is called The Shift. Sam's had some really great guests on. Yeah.
If you the podcast, if you search The Shift with Sam Baker, but it's also on Instagram. It's the links in my bio, and there are actually links to lots and lots of the episodes in my bio as well.
So go and check Sam out, and thank you so much for coming on. I've loved chatting with you.
Thank you for having me. We made it finally.
Yay! You know, it's just life, isn't it? At least we know that these things happen. And good luck with everything. Keep amplifying the voices. I mean, it's amazing. We need this, and keep doing what you're doing. And
you too. Keep calling out that
BS.
BS.
It's sort of like my calling card now, I think. Yeah. Okay, thanks everyone who joined, and I'll let you know when the next one's coming up. I do have a couple of guests planned. I have Molly Galbraith from Girls Gone Strong, who has a new book out. I have Dr. Rebecca, I forget her last name, Dr. Louise Newson's colleague, Lewis. Sorry, it just came to me then. She's going to come on and talk to you all about treatment options that are available. And I've got a few others lined up, so I'll let you know via email. Anyway, thanks everyone. Thanks for joining in. Take care.
Bye.
Bye for now.